other context-setting conversations to come. We are now going to have a panel specifically focused on use cases. So this was kind of the overall theme for today. We really wanted to bring this broader AI conversation into context through use cases. So bring it into specific examples of what's the art of the possible, what is being done that's going well, what lessons are we learning, how can we have that broader conversation about risks and opportunities, but in context for use cases. So I'm excited to welcome our panel, moderated by the producer of Humanitarian AI, Brent Phillips, and then we have panelists, Manu Chopra, the CEO of Karya, Raghu Dharmaraju, the CEO of ARTPARK. We have Dan Hammer, who's the managing partner of Ode. And then finally, last but not least, Sam Miller, the director, one of the directors at Global DeepMind's Impact Accelerator. So thank you. Welcome them, please.
So thank you, everyone, and welcome to our panel on AI use cases. So I'm Brent Phillips. I produce the Humanitarian AI Today podcast, and last night we actually published an interview with Kate Benkin from Microsoft Philanthropies. So that's an example of our work, and I thought we'd treat this panel as a kind of a mini interview, and we're going to hear from each of our panelists. And the first question I always ask is to please introduce yourself. And Raghu, maybe we could start with you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mastercard, for having me here. My name is Raghu Dharmaraju. I run an organization called ARTPARK, which counterintuitively stands for AI and Robotics Technology Park at the Indian Institute of Science, which is India's top research university. Our work broadly spans, AI for social impact, a lot of it currently in health, that is in pandemic and climate resilience, health screening and diagnostics, and native mixed language audio plus text tools, right? So this is at a high level summary, and we focused on what we say AI-based solutions that are integrated into systems. So it's not just about the AI. You'll hear me say this again and again. It's AI by itself does not solve anything. We have to eat food. We can't upload sewage and download food, right? So there's a lot that has to happen for AI to be a solution. And those have to be integrated into the systems that actually serve the billions of people. Because if they are not integrated in those systems, and those people are depending on those particular systems, then there's just a mismatch.
Manu, can we go to you?
Awesome. Hi, my name is Manu. I help run something called Karya. Karya is the Sanskrit word for work that gives you dignity. And that's exactly what we do. Our goal is to bring dignified digital work to low-income communities across the world and use AI to build an accelerated pathway out of poverty for our communities. Today, we employ over 100,000 people across all states in India to build AI, high-quality AI data sets. We pay them over 20 times the Indian minimum wage. And our goal is to think of AI and the opportunities coming out of AI as something that we need to make sure is centered around our communities, thinking of them not just as beneficiaries of AI, but also builders of these AI models that all of us will be using. We're on a mission to facilitate over $1 billion in wealth redistribution in the next 2 to 3 years using AI. That's what we do.
That's amazing. Dan, you're next.
My name is Dan Hammer. I am a data scientist. I can say that with impunity because no one really knows what that means. I don't even really know what that means. Among a couple different projects, one project I had co-founded with my colleague who built Microsoft's planetary computer and worked at the World Bank for a long time, Bruno. We have co-founded a project called Clay. And Clay is a large, open source and nonprofit Earth observation model. So it's like a large language model, but instead of being trained on text, it's trained on satellite imagery. And the 4 use cases that span identifying above ground biomass, to identifying plastic waste sites that are near rivers, or even concentrated animal feeding operations where cows are, making the data direct Earth observation much more accessible to many, many more people.
And Sam, it's a pleasure to have you here, and tell us about yourself.
So I'm Sam Miller, and I work at Google DeepMind in the Impact Accelerator. I'll tell you, last year at UNGA, one of my key learnings was you're going to have to walk everywhere, so only ever wear sneakers. My learning for this year is when you're on day 8, you might lose your voice, so please bear with me if I can't speak very well. So Google DeepMind, for those who don't know, is one of the parts of Google that develops foundational AI capabilities. And we have the luxury of having a positive impact in the world through publications, through going into Google products, and through something my team focuses on, the Impact Accelerator, which is looking at targeted programs where we custom match what AI models and capabilities we have with not whole problems, but the pieces of the problems in the world that aligned with the SDGs, where we believe that AI can make a difference. So I think some of the earlier panels talked about AI as a very powerful tool, like a hammer, but not every problem is a nail. And we look at matching the specific type of AI capabilities with the aspects of a particular issue. And we work broadly across life sciences, climate and environment, and in what we call AI in society, looking specifically at education and at generative AI for social good.
You know, on this podcast, I have an opportunity to talk to some amazing people, and we kind of nerd out a little bit, and it's kind of cool what you're each working on. And since we're talking about inclusion here, maybe you could just sum up in a couple of sentences what inclusion means to you from your vantage point of where you're working and who you're trying to help.
Sure. We think of inclusion from 2 angles, right? One is how you build a solution. So what's the data that's being represented in it, etc. So we think of systems that enable building the solutions. Things like we are creating in both speech and in medicine, we are creating data sets that are really representative of India's people, the challenges, contexts, so on and so forth. On the other side, now how are those solutions serving those people, right? Earlier when prepping, I was saying, let's say these solutions are integrated into the top hospitals of India, right? That's not good enough. Right? They have to be integrated into the public health systems that actually serve the bottom billion of the 1.5 billion people in India. Right? So you got to think of, so I keep coming back to this element of systems, right? Solutions that are integrated with systems, right? And you have to ask how you're architecting those systems and who runs those systems.
How about you, Manu?
Very, very, very similar, right? I think of 3 ideas when I think of inclusion. First is centering, like are our communities centered in these conversations? Are we working with them, like I said, to build these AI systems and not just think of them as, oh, they'll be an excellent beneficiary for these systems, right? So one of the projects we've had the honor of doing this year with the Gates Foundation, we're employing 30,000 low-income women across 6 language groups to build the largest gender-intentional AI corpora in Indic languages. Right? And turns out it's not a surprise. Like when we do that, the resulting AI model is less misogynistic. It's more gender intentional. It serves our communities better. So that's the first thing, right? What the communities we are seeking to serve involved in the process of building that AI? I think that's the first question to ask. The second is agency, right? Once the technology is built, do they get to change it? Do they get to give us feedback and be like, I do not like this, and this is what I actually want, right? Because so much of what we do in the impact sector is designing for need versus designing for desire, right? And I think it's so important, and we got to do both, but it is so important that our communities have agency over changing the technologies we're building for them, with them, and that's something really, really important. And the third is ownership. Who ends up owning these data sets? One of the things that we do in the vast majority of cases we do our work is our communities end up owning the data sets that they create. They get royalties from future resales of those data sets. That to us is very, very exciting because it makes sure that they will stay at the center of this conversation. So I think of it as a centering, agency, ownership, those key attributes. Yeah.
Sam.
Right now, satellite imagery is extraordinarily expensive and difficult to use. It's like a jumble of library books that's just sitting in the middle of the floor, and it takes a lot of effort to pull out the book that you're looking for. And honestly, right now, the groups that can afford to pull out the right book, it's mainly the defense and intelligence community. At least 3/4 of the market is driven by defense and intelligence. the way in which to get many more people to engage with those books is to organize those books, to index that information for search. No one really cares about the pixels, it's the information that's otherwise sequestered or locked in those pixels. And with these extraordinarily large models, it's almost magic at the sort of the ability for them to pick up on these subtle and implicit patterns in data that matter to humans. And we've seen that with language models. And it feels like magic that, 5 years ago, these, natural language processing felt tinny. It didn't really sound right. And now, 8th graders can cheat on their AP math homework. It's amazing what has happened in such a short period of time. And that same sort of information organization is coming to Earth observation right now, and which allows us to disintermediate people who can use the data, activists, journalists, local policymakers, from the information that's otherwise locked in the data that has already been collected, and collected in great amounts. I mean, $2 billion a year just from the United States is going into this amazing wealth of information, but it's not you can't transact on it. The model is necessary but not sufficient for an interface. There's also the AI infrastructure, and then to enable many more web developers in order to actually use that information, as opposed to being that expert in both AI and Earth observation. And so this is one of those cases, and I'm not like a pundit for AI, but this is one of those cases where it just sort of works. It has driven down the cost of developing these products by literally 3 orders, sometimes even 4 orders of magnitude, 1,000 to 10,000 times. For reference, the first product that I had built is called Global Forest Watch, to track deforestation from satellite imagery. And by our estimates, it would cost almost 1,000 times less if we were to regenerate the data today than it was in 2008 when we had started, which just enables other people aside from defense contractors to interact with that data.
Thank you for that. And Sam, what does inclusion mean to you?
So at a systemic level, you always hear of inclusion is making a seat at the table for somebody. And for me, it's actually designing the table from the beginning to have room for everybody. So making a seat at the table is fine, but let's design it from the bottom up. So I think that the rest of the panel is talking about systemically thinking about what we're doing with AI from the beginning. So in the development cycle, and also in the once you have it out there in the world, how are you promoting access, and what are some of the issues that might get in the way of people maximizing the beneficial use of it? For an example, when we developed AlphaFold 2 and we knew we wanted to make it available to people, one of the things that we thought might be an issue is bandwidth and compute knowledge, like both how to compute and also the bandwidth to compute. So we folded these 3D models of proteins and put it in a database that was available to everybody to make the access better. And then doing research on who was using the database and what value they were getting out of using it, one of the things that we noticed that there wasn't as much uptake in some areas in the global south. So we dove in and we talked to on-the-ground organizations and to the researchers, and it's like an obvious thing, but you don't, even if you have a PhD in structural biology, in today's world, you don't come out with that PhD understanding AI necessarily, or how to use it or how to interpret the AI. So one of the things we then are working with is on creating more educational materials around AlphaFold and the AI, so that the structural biologists or chemists or whoever wants to use the models understands how to interpret them and has that empowerment to use them.
During our practice session, we talked a little bit about large language models, and it's always hard to get started experimenting with AI. And I wanted to ask each of you, what's difficult about your work relevant to experimenting with AI? Like what kind of challenges are people facing around just getting started? And Sam, I wanted to start with you because you work for a Impact Accelerator, and every day you see teams who come to you and they're trying to get projects started, and they have a lot of common challenges and individual challenges. But what kind of challenges are you seeing relevant to AI?
Some of the stuff that earlier panels were talking about is people come in as I want to use AI. I have a problem, AI is powerful, I want to use AI. And parsing through the issue or that problem you're trying to solve and figuring out what aspects of that can benefit from AI and which ones would benefit from other tools is one of the challenges for people. So we would call it is that an AI-shaped problem? Like, is it something that would benefit from particular AI? Another one is just that there are so many different kinds of AI. So everybody has heard of generative AI, and I of course say Gemini and other large language models, but it is, as earlier panels talked about, it's not the only version, and it's not the only tool that's out there. So it's just sifting through those. And then the third, it would just be that overwhelming, this is new, it's technology, I don't know what to do with it. I just so I can't start.
Dan, how about you? Like, what's the hardest thing that you're struggling with, or what do you see other people struggling with about getting started experimenting with AI?
Interfaces, broadly speaking, either application programming interfaces for those more technically inclined, or user interfaces just to interact with the models. I teach environmental data science at Berkeley, and I had my students do my day job for me using Gemini, where I had asked them in a Colab notebook, which is just an interface in order to code on the web without installing anything, to help us identify for this project for Mr. Gore called Climate Trace, to identify the owners of particular carbon-emitting facilities using Gemini. And the application programming interface and the ability to get spun up, it's like 3 clicks, and then you just start experimenting. And it's good for certain things, and it's not great for other things, but starting to make mistakes and see the live effect of interacting with a model that must have cost hundreds of millions of dollars to train. I don't even know how much Gemini cost to train, but the idea that you can just start interacting with that is incredibly powerful, and that doesn't exist for any data that that's in Earth observation, for example. Those types of interfaces so that you can just start to find things in the data or information in data that doesn't exist anywhere else aside from satellite imagery, like the biomass of a particular tree over the last 2 weeks in Brazil. You just don't have the interface in order to do it. So investing in that liminal space is important.
Manu, I'd like to just switch the question just a little bit, but I understand that you got your start, you created a student group at Stanford, computer science and social good, and coincidentally I got my start in humanitarian operations via a student group at Stanford. And what kind of challenges are you seeing relevant to experimenting with technology, and how are you engaging others in solving these challenges? What's your inclusive strategy?
Absolutely, thanks. That's a blast from the past. I appreciate it. I think both in the case of Stanford, but also across the global south, I see a couple of things that worry me. First is just lack of data, right? In the languages we work in, there are very limited publicly available data sets. Yesterday, Dr. Uy and I, we announced this very exciting partnership with data.org, where we are doing the first major public scale data collection effort in 10 languages that are spoken by 100 million people. I mean, while that's exciting, it's also very scary that these are not marginalized languages. 100 million people speak these languages, and this will be the first large-scale data sets that are available for people to download in these languages, right? So I think lack of data is one thing. Second thing, and I'm stealing Dr. Ui's point from yesterday, we've just been doing so many of these conferences, is duplication, right? I don't know how many AI tutors we need, but I do think we may have too many, right? Because look, everyone needs something separate for their use case. That's very, very fair. But I'm seeing a lot of duplication across the sector, and that worries me because it's not like we have infinite amounts of money going around, right? So I think that's the second thing that I would love to caution people on, and just be like, wherever we can collaborate, we need to collaborate, just for the sake of the ecosystem. And then I think outside of those two things that I see, I think those are the key things that I see as challenges in the ecosystem. The final thing I will say is maybe an over-reliance on AI as a solution, which goes back to the point that Raghu was making earlier. There's a professor, Kentaro Toyama, who wrote this book called Geek Heresy, which is my favorite book on tech for good. It's a book I highly recommend everyone read. The book says Kentaro says, the technology is an excellent amplifier of existing human intent and capacity. It is not a substitute, right? And he calls this the law of amplification. So I think being very careful on when to use AI when to solve problems with AI. I was recently pitched an idea on how AI will end the caste system in India. I would be shocked if that happens. And I think it is really, really important that we amplify existing human forces using AI and technology instead of replacing them. Because those human forces exist, good or bad, for a reason, and we need to find ways to solve the problems and fix the systems that, like Raghu sir talks about. Yeah.
Raghu, and I'd like to twist your question around a little bit as well. And in the room over there, we talked about AI infrastructure, the infrastructure to power, innovation. And what challenges, again, are you facing relevant to AI, and what's important about improving the infrastructure behind these projects?
If you were to put a gun to my head and say, Raghu, 2 words, right? I would say how to. I feel like we get caught up in the what a lot, and really the answer is in the how to. And when expand that, how to build AI-based solutions responsibly. I do not like the term responsible AI. Do you say responsible knife? Right? It's about how you build. That's where a lot of it, and that's where we spend a lot of our time, right? So we say, yes, digital public infrastructure and tools, but before that is capacity. And a lot of what we do is the methodology of going from what exactly is the problem and solution idea, what's the evaluation framework, what does success look like, right? And this is not just about the AI model. The evaluation is much broader than just the AI model. Remember, there's an ASHA worker who has to take an image. ASHA workers are frontline health workers. Let's say she does not take that image properly. Does the AI still work? So that's going to impact the design of your AI. Is it going to work on blurry images, or are you going to give her instant feedback that the image is blurry, right? And actually, does she have the policy and capacity framework to let her do that work, right? So we spend it. So policy and capacity, DPI and tools, data standards and data, and then AI-based solutions, right? This is the hierarchy we think about.
That's really good. Sam, I wanted to go back to you, and working with the Accelerator program, how do you help people? They come to you with these challenges and these interests in doing these amazing things, and how do you help them get started? What's your inclusive strategy?
So we have experts. So one of the things about AI that I think helps make it more impactful is taking an interdisciplinary approach. So not just having pure AI research is involved in things, but taking, if you want to work on climate, having climate scientists there. If you're working in education, having education learning scientists there. Same with biology. So it is really getting to the underneath of what an organization is trying to accomplish, what they want to do, and what are the blockers they're facing, and what are the opportunities that they see there. So we really start from what's the end use, who are the users, where do you want to get it in the world, and what do you see the challenges are, and then we think through what technologies and capabilities we have internally, and whether we have something that we can match with it. Though we have this create AI, have a positive impact in the world. There's a lot that happens in between that, right? So there's a lot of things you need to do. Think about the ecosystem. And Dr. Yui, who's been a very busy man this week, ran a panel for us, something we did with Climate Change AI, which was a kickoff of the missing data set wish list in the climate space. So thinking like an ecosystem, is this an area that has enough data out there? Does it need more data? What's missing? What do you want to do with the data? What about the education? What about bandwidth? Are you trying to solve an issue that's going to have bandwidth issues or access to electricity? So do you need a low-tech solution? So it's really getting in and understanding where you want to be deploying a solution. So approaching it from both ends. Yes, that's my short answer. Approach it from both sides.
That's a great answer. Dan, do you have a takeaway for us?
No, but I'm hoping that DeepMind builds these models too. So this is a shameless plug to build and release one of these very, very large models.
How about you, Manu?
I think, I see the 21 seconds left, so that's like a scary thing to see. I have 15 seconds to summarize AI. Sounds good. I think, look, the potential is incredibly immense, and I think the responsibility is on us to not repeat the mistakes of the last technological revolution, and make sure that we truly are inclusive. I think when we think of an AI builder, even for me, I think of someone working in a swanky office like this one and, like coding AI, right? But the world employs 5 million plus data workers who actually build the AI models that you and I use, right? It is really important that we think deeply about every single stakeholder in the ecosystem. And with that.
Thank you. Raghu, your 10-second takeaway.
Yeah, I'll mention 4 things very briefly. I think if you systems view from the perspective of the systems owners, right? These are systems that are serving billions, right? Second is human-centered, right? Yes, you want to be systems view, but you want to be human-centered. Third is iterative co-innovation, co-implementation. Very key. This is the how. The last is open innovation networks, right? So if we do these 4, I think we'll have transformative change, right? If we do just one of them, we will not.
Thank you, all of you.